And we are live. Good evening and welcome to the ICE-CAST Live. My name is Shane Chebsey and with me is my co-host, Ollie McManee. Good evening, Ollie. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good, yeah. Finished your banana now, have you?
I have finished my banana. It's a very nice banana as well. I'm going to have banana breath for the rest of the hour. Luckily, I've got a cup of tea to wash it down with as well.
And luckily for us, there's yet no sense of smell down the internet, so that's good.
No, you're quite glad there isn't, because what I had for me tea was garlicified to the hilt.
Oh, I just had good old-fashioned egg on toast because that's all I had
time to boring! Do. Oh my God!
I know, but you know what? It's full of protein, mate. Full of protein.
I did nearly just go for cereal, and then I realised that's what I had for me tea yesterday, so I can't have tea. No, I'm not 16 anymore.
I'll be honest. I quite often have cereal for my tea.
Now, Shane, I've only got one stipulation for tonight's show.
Okay.
It needs to be over by 9 o'clock because there's a very important TV show I need to watch at 9 o'clock.
Could that be Resident Alien by any chance?
No, Taskmaster's back on. Whoa! Yes, of course it's Resident Alien.
What a great segue.
Thank you for falling into my trap.
So we are very lucky this evening to have the two co-creators of Resident Alien, the original comic, with us for our guests, and they are, of course, Peter Hogan and Steve Parkhouse. And well, I'm really excited because both of these guys are incredibly talented writer and artist, and we've been fans for quite a while, haven't we, Ollie?
Yeah. I mean, I love Resident Alien, and I'm sure there's other things we can pop on to talk about, like Bo Jeffrey's saga. I'm sure will come up, and of course, maybe some ABC Comics stuff as well.
Yes, there's lots of stuff.
There's lots
between the two of them. We've only got an hour, so without any further ado, Sam, roll that VT, please, mate. Welcome back to the ICE-CAST, and welcome to the ICE-CAST, Peter and Steve.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. We're very happy to have you on. Thank you so much for giving us your time tonight.
You're welcome.
Our
pleasure. So predominantly this evening, we're obviously going to be talking about Resident Alien, which we are all big fans of. And Ollie has even watched the TV series, haven't you, Ollie?
I've even switched on the television to watch something.
Whereas I am just a comic geek, and this show is all about comics. But obviously, you know, when something goes into another media and it opens up different dimensions of the story, it can be really exciting, can't it? We really enjoy all that as well, so it's all good fun. So we'll dive right into it because we have only got an hour, and the next episode apparently is on at 9 o'clock. So we don't want people to be missing it while they're watching this. So how did it come about, guys? It's probably a question for you, isn't it, Peter? How did the comic transition from the comic to the TV screen?
Well, it was kind of there very early on, because when we tried to get a deal, Steve and I put together sort of the first 6 pages of script for, fully scripted art. And it's the scene with, Harry out fishing on the lake, which the TV show starts exactly the same way. And we sent that into, various publishers and waited for a response. But the odd thing was when I started writing it, I had something a feeling that I'd never had before with anything else, which was it felt like I was writing a TV show. So I thought, yeah, well, who knows? Let's see what happens. And Mike Richardson at Dark Horse got straight back to us, and I think one of the reasons is he could see what I could see. And so Mike, from a very early point, already started talking to Hollywood.
Right.
And it took 10 years to happen.
But I mean, I thought the same thing when I was reading the comic, actually. The way that you built the story and how the cast was built up, the characters, and the fact that it was in a small town, it's a great opportunity to create a really nice, tight, character-driven story, isn't it? And a lot of other TV shows have that format. So it seemed very natural, actually, that sort of transition. But there are differences, aren't there, between the comic, quite big differences between the comic and the TV show?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's similarities as well, but it's like, it's not, a terribly faithful adaptation. They've changed a lot of things, but we don't really mind because it's actually very enjoyable. It's a good thing in its own right. And, they've beefed up the comedy partly because of Alan Tudyk and partly because Chris Sharon's a comedy writer from way back. And I think every single episode there's been a bit where I've laughed out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it makes more sense, doesn't it? Because if you've already consumed the comic, why would you watch a TV series if it's exactly the same? I think it makes more sense for it to depart and to have its own identity and its own life, and that way you can enjoy both equally. I mean, you're enjoying it, aren't you, Ollie? The series?
I'm absolutely loving it. I think Alan Tudyk in the lead role is brilliant. The relationship he's forging with this little kid, who's the only kid in the town who can see he's an alien, is really, really a great addition to it all. And I do like the characters, and I also like, Pete, and this is sort of paraphrasing you, the whole series from the comic into the TV show is more about alien assimilation rather than alien invasion. I really like that idea, and it plays really well at the pace that TV can bring to the kind of stories you were telling in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it is it's kind of an immigrant story. I mean, in a way, Superman's kind of an immigrant story as well.
Yeah.
But, Steve and I very early on, Steve wanted to do something with aliens, and this is what we came up with. But right at the start, we kind of agreed on the fact that we didn't want to do the same old thing of having the alien as the villain. We thought, why not have him as the hero?
Mm-hmm. What a great idea.
And like you say, you're talking, 2011 at a time when sort of, this is a super fresh idea. And to pick up on a point you mentioned, joking about 10 years in the making, I believe that Mike Richardson said that was actually a quick deal.
Yeah, he said it was
10 years.
One of the quick ones.
That's crazy, isn't it? And a question for you, Steve, the design of the alien, he's very sort of traditionally alien, isn't he? Did you go through lots of sort of ideas for the way he would look? Some more human, more alien, moving away from the grey look, or was it a very instinctive? You nailed it right away.
It's very rare that you nail something right away. I would say that I wanted physiologically, I wanted him to be humanoid. Then people could actually identify with him.
Yeah.
But in terms of facial features, it needed to be something that would transform over time. And if you go back to the early issues, he looks quite different. He's actually transforming with each volume that comes out. And I thought that sort of kept pace with the whole thing. That was the idea, is that you're watching an entity evolving. But you don't know how it's going to end up.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that he's not just assimilating culturally to our culture. He's also gradually physically changing as well, and it's very subtle. It's very subtle, that actually, because now that you've mentioned it, I can see it, but I probably never noticed it straight away.
Well, I've explained to readers who have questioned why the change. And I've just said, well, he's starting to get better looking. It's as simple as that. Because that's easier to draw, So.
Not as many creases, wrinkles, bumps, and sort of boils, I suppose.
It's very, very difficult to do to do a new kind of alien, especially one who is going to be sympathetic, or at least readers are going to be sympathetic towards him. You know, everybody's seen the monsters and the things that you have nightmares about, but we didn't want that. We wanted someone who was just a tad off human, so he could gradually evolve. But that was my take on it, anyway.
I did notice that, you know, while I was reading it, I like reread the first series just recently, so it would be fresh in my head. And his sort of monologue, you know, when you can hear what he's thinking, it's very different to what how the character is being sort of portrayed in the TV series, obviously. But also, I did notice he has a lot of humanity. His morals, his moral compass, they're all very familiar to us. He didn't feel very alien, you know? I mean, that's not a criticism. It's more a sort of, I think there are these, I mean, it's a question really, Peter, is that, are you sort of indicating that even an alien creature, they will have these sort of morals after time? There's like a common moral compass that any culture will evolve?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I think it's particular to him. And he is, I mean, one of the things that happens in the series is he falls in love with Earth. He falls in love with the people he encounters, and with, you know, crime paperbacks and whodunit movies and stuff like that. He's going native, you know, he's turning into an Earthling. Yeah.
And is there a lot of you in the character? You know, because he has these
it's an alien.
Yeah, I got to get
I'm not saying that Peter's an alien, but you know, the things that he likes,
the mask off.
the sensibilities. You know, because he's a really likable character right off the bat. You know, we all sort of you can relate to him very quickly. And I'm just wondering, you know, how you built that character, where a lot of those things came from.
I think it was kind of always there. I mean, you know, in a very real sense, you know, what you do with storytelling like this is you're channeling it, and that's what Harry was like from the start. I mean, he has changed over the course of the series, but there's an interesting thing. I mean, the name. For some reason, when I started thinking about the character, I thought about a friend of mine who was Dutch called Harry, and he was kind of a gentle giant. He didn't speak much English. I didn't speak any Dutch at all, but we ended up becoming friends. And maybe it's because of that I thought of him for the character. And I thought, well, I can't use his surname. So I started looking at other Dutch surnames, and I ran down the list, and I came to Van der Spiegel, which actually means looking glass. And I thought, that's perfect. He's kind of like our reflection.
I like that. I like that very much. That's really good.
The minute I see a foreign name like Van der Spiegel, knowing what Spiegel meant in German, I thought there's got to be something in that. I'm very glad I didn't have to ask the question, Pete. It came up in natural conversation.
Well, you got it anyway.
You got it in. You still got it in.
Well, I grew up with the sort of legends of Till Eulenspiegel, which is again this jester character from the Middle Ages, who on one shoulder has an owl, the Eulen in the name, and then a Spiegel, and again he holds up the mirror to the Catholic Church and the farce of the Middle Ages. So a very colourful character. So the minute I saw Van der Spiegel, I picked up on the Spiegel bit and looked further into it. But I tell you what, both the comic and the TV show, it reminds me very much in tone of the TV show. What's it? Northern Exposure. Where it kind of, you've got to kind of fish out of water. In this case, it's an alien. It's got a doctor in Northern Exposure as well, I've just realised. But I really like the pace there. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the kind of colder setting as well of the TV show. But you must have both been really thrilled when you heard that Alan Tudyk was involved and cast as Dr. Van der Spiegel.
Yeah, immediately. I mean, that was one of the sort of the most kind of optimistic signs that we got.
Yeah.
Because immediately I thought that's almost perfect casting.
Yeah, it really is.
And I suspect because of that casting, that's why everyone's waiting for the Cassian Disney Plus Star Wars show to come on, because obviously Alan Tudyk's involved with your show now.
Yep.
He's in
Good
demand.
on you.
He gets
Good
around.
on you, yeah.
It's really nice to see these black and white art pages. Thanks for sharing these, Steve.
That's pencils.
Is that the pencils? Wow.
Yeah, I thought people would like to see pencils because you rarely get a chance to see them.
Really, really nice. And obviously it shows you as well what, the difference with the color, because you do your own coloring, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of black in this piece we see at the moment.
Yeah, come on, Sam. Come on with it. You've always done your own colouring for a long time, though, haven't you, Steve? Because I remember one of the first things that I read of yours that I was conscious was yours, and I'm going to embarrass myself here probably, was a piece you did for Zoids. I don't know if you remember doing that.
Whoa, yeah. Zoids!
Yes.
Blow me neck. You'll be mentioning the Invisibles issue 12 next.
But I remember, because I remember reading that, I remember seeing the credits and colours and art, Steve Parkhouse. So I remember thinking, not many people do that, do their own colours. Has been important to you for a long time?
Well, you're talking about a pre-digital age. Really.
Yes, it was, yeah.
And I was interested in developing a watercolor technique, which is hardly ever done in comics.
No.
And that was an opportunity to practice, and people seem to think it was okay. The reason that they're not popular in comics is because they're very low key, very subtle.
And that's a shame.
And comics usually are sort of trying to attract your attention frame by frame. They're trying to hit you in the face most of the time. But then when everything went digital, I thought that would be an even bigger opportunity to learn programs. And of course, it's that much quicker as well. And I don't think Dark Horse had any more staff lined up to do that kind of work. They could have outsourced it, I suppose, but it just fell naturally to me.
It certainly has a signature. Sorry?
I said Steve's a one-man band.
Yeah. But it certainly has a lot, it really, you can tell it's your work instantly, whether it's black and white, whether it's colour. Your palette choices are very much your own. Those sort of, you've got those deep colours that you use that a lot of artists, shy away from because they can't seem to control them, and then you'll have those subtle hues as well alongside them. And it really is quite distinctive. I love the way it develops. And so do you always then now use digital coloring? Have you abandoned the traditional watercolor washes altogether?
As far as comics work is concerned, yeah, because speed is of the essence.
Yeah.
But I still like to keep my hand in with just natural materials. So whenever I get the opportunity, I sort of just do a bit of sketching and colouring, just off my own bat, really. And I would advise every artist to do the same. And in fact, they probably do.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, if you can get stuck in a commercial sort of treadmill, can't you? And then you lose sort of touch with all the other parts of your skill sets. It's very easy to do, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the scary bit. You start to lose your skill set, the one that took 20 or 30 years to develop. And within a few months, it's gone.
Yeah.
When I get commissions, I have to sort of turn back to natural materials. And that's
of course
really difficult. It's really scary.
Were there any new tricks or any new styles you had to develop for Resident Alien? Because obviously in something like the Bo Jeffrey saga, it's a more of a cartoony Leo Baxendale kind of vibe to it. But here, whilst it's very much your artwork, it's certainly more of a style suited for the story you're telling in Dark Horse.
Yeah. I like to tailor the artwork to suit the story. For me, telling the story is absolute priority. So anything that detracts from the narrative is not really needed. It's not wanted. So I chose a pretty low-key style. It's fairly naturalistic. Whereas the Bo Jeffries, they're more like you say, they're more like caricatures. In fact, they're more like grotesques.
Yeah.
And that will often detract from a narrative, unless it's Alan Moore, of course, where nothing can detract. So sometimes you have to just step back and let the story tell itself, and you can do that in a variety of ways. But I mean, Peter's narrative is so clear and concise and deceptively simple. It's a very, very hard thing to do. And I thought I'd do the same with the artwork.
It's so suitable. It really is. I mean, Pete, I'm actually in awe of the writing on it, because as Steve says, it is so natural. The way the characters' voices are so natural.
Character driven, like you said, Shane.
And the language it sounds like real conversation. In a lot of comics, it's all melodrama and all that sort of thing. And the only one that employs any sort of slight speech melodrama is the alien, which you would expect, but all the human characters are so natural, and they have their own voices. It's incredible how you've done that. And it really, I heard their voices, when you're reading the comics, you can hear the voices in your head, and I haven't seen the TV series. So, I do wonder how different it might be for someone who does it the other way around and sort of watches the TV series.
Quite different, because obviously, quite different. Do you find yourself reading this piece of conversation out then, Peter, when you're putting the script together to try and capture their voices in the original? Because I dare say a few miniseries on, you've probably got their voices living in your head by now, haven't you?
Kind of. I mean, it's not instant. I tend to sort of, sketch with, very rough dialogue what needs to be said in a scene, and then I'll go back and tart it up, basically, until I'm happy with it, and then I can kind of let it go. I don't really know how I do it. I just do. I think dialogue's one of the things I've always been good at. A lot of the other stuff I had to learn, but dialogue came very naturally to me, much to my surprise.
I mean, that's something I also noticed on your Tom Strong stuff as well, because that's very different type of comic, there's a lot more like melodrama and a lot more sci-fi and fantasy and all that sort of stuff. But I think what grounded it really grounded it, the humanity of the dialogue. Yeah,
well, I was really following, Alan Moore's template, all of that. So all I really had to do was try and be true to that. Whereas Resident Alien was really the first kind of major thing that was all me and Steve, and so I had to learn how to do a lot of that stuff. And again, I was pleasantly surprised that it did come quite naturally. But I think when you're doing a Tom Strong series, what Tom Strong's going to be saying and doing. It's all kind of laid out for you. Whereas when it's your own character, you're finding out as you go along.
And is that a little bit intimidating when you first started?
It was until I kind of relaxed into it and just thought, I can do this. Let's see where it leads.
Nice.
And what was the decision behind setting it in a small American town as opposed to, say, a British town? Was there a reason for that?
Well, I suppose partly a commercial reason. North America is sexier, but it's
also, careful.
It's also, for me, British stuff is that's my daily life. That's reality. It's not the great kind of storytelling landscape that America is. So for me, it just made obvious sense to set it there.
Yeah, so it's not just escapism for the reader or the viewer, it's escapism for you as well.
Yeah, Steve gets Steve gets fed up with the fact that we spend so much time indoors. It's like, can't we go for a walk, look at the mountains a bit,
Just
yes, it is,
by a window.
Lovely scenery. I mean, I think maybe Twin Peaks was at the back of my mind because I was thinking pine trees right from the start. So
there's definitely a vibe of that. We just had a comment. Epic stuff from Kevin Judgedrome. Thank you, Kevin. I didn't think a few words.
Yeah, I didn't think our interviewing skills were that good, but thank you.
I think he's talking about the comment.
Yeah, do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are some epic scenes in the book. Some of the the establishing shots and some of the sort of dream sequences, for want of a better expression, when when he's thinking about his home world memories, or when he's going back to when he landed on Earth. There's some really, really nice outdoor shots there. I suppose that's when you have your fun, Steve, when you can do those more.
Those are your money shots, and then you've got to just set everything indoors after that.
Yeah, domestic detail can get a little bit samey. This is nothing against you, Peter. It's we
don't want them falling out on the show, no.
But if I get a chance to do a nice landscape, I know that I'm a happy bunny, because I can see the mountains of the Lake District from my bedroom window. So that's the background that informs my drawing. Yeah. I mean, it's not the same scale as the Pacific Coast, but that's what I imagine. So, it's a bonus if there's a nice landscape in the flow.
And are you able to sort of insert stuff? Because I mean, I'm not sure how you guys work together. Do you write full script, Peter? Do you sort of? Yeah. Are you very detailed in your descriptions?
Normally, yes. I think Steve and I have probably kind of got a bit of shorthand down over the years that I know I can trust him to get on with it. So I do keep things not fairly brief, but as brief as I can. So
yeah.
Yes, because you mercifully brief, Peter.
Yeah, it's full script. I mean, I couldn't really imagine doing it any other way.
Well, I think most British writers that I speak to, they prefer that technique rather than what has become known as the Marvel way, where it's just a plot and the artist runs with it and then they come back and script it afterwards. Some use it, but not many now.
But for me, if you don't know what's being said and how much room it's going to take, then you can't get to the action stuff. Because people go, I forgot to say this other thing, 2 pages back.
But I would imagine any script, Steve, is a holiday based on the scripts you would have got from Alan Moore anyway. So no matter how full your scripts are, Peter, I imagine there's still less than a third of a read of an Alan Moore script.
Yeah, well, Alan,
I've been known to go on a bit.
Oh, right.
I always thought Alan was a dyed-in-the-wool novelist. I mean, he has a novelist sensibility.
Yeah.
And I think he really does. I won't say struggles, but I think you have to be very, very focused to write, a simple script. So yeah, I mean, I've worked with Alan on and off over the years, and he does like to write, but that's his prerogative.
Yeah,
it's always worth it when you get to the actual point, because he just goes a slightly longer way around.
And do you find with any script, regardless of the writer, Steve, that you have to go over it time and again to make sure you've translated what's in that script to the page? Or are you of an experience now where you can look at it, soak it in, and you don't necessarily have to return that much?
I appreciate knowing what the characters are saying, because that determines their facial expressions.
Right, yeah.
It determines the way that the characters will relate to each other. And that's the struggle with the Marvel system is that if you don't know what they're saying, you're just really working in the dark a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's why I think you get a lot of generic expressions, like the grimace, and stuff like that. Everybody's grimacing, aren't they? Because it's just like it's an action scene, so let's get them all grimacing. So there's no subtlety. But in Resident Alien, obviously, there's a lot of subtlety. There's body language, there's expressions, and it's all portrayed so well. The acting of the characters. I mean, that has to come from a good script. There's no way that you could just, that has to marry up, doesn't it? The art and the script to get that that type of storytelling to work.
Well, it has to live, and unless you've got that fusion of words and pictures, it's not going to come to life. And I think that's something that both Peter and I take for granted, really. But a lot of people struggle with that. If you're just starting out in the business, for instance, that's not always an obvious thing to master. It takes a long, long time just to get the right pitch.
I think, Steve and I had worked before Resident Alien. I think we did 5 issues of The Dreaming together. So we kind of got a feel for how each other worked a long time ago.
Well, it certainly lasted you well, hasn't it?
Yeah. And how long have you guys known each other then?
Since
really, I was Steve's editor on Revolver, so I think that was probably the first time we met. Was
that was the 80s, wasn't it, or 90s?
Oh,
90s. Late 80s. Late 80s.
Was it late? Crisis was late 80s, I think, and Revolver came after that, didn't it?
Yeah,
the 90s. Gosh,
I remember Revolver. Yeah, if you can't remember, if you remember the 90s, you weren't there, Shane.
I don't remember that well. Yeah, my memories of the 90s are a bit sketchy, I will admit. But I loved Revolver. I wish it had lasted longer than it did. What was it like working on that magazine, guys?
Well, the weird thing for me, I mean, it was a very exciting time for comics because it was the tail end of that kind of comics boom of the 80s.
Yeah.
And they basically gave me a free hand to do it, pretty much. But they also gave me no time at all to put it together. So the stuff that ended up there was the stuff that I could get.
Right.
Had it gone on, then we would have done a lot more interesting things, but they pulled the plug.
Yeah, such a shame. I mean, it was an interesting I mean, I think it was just too interesting. A lot of people just didn't get what it was about, I think, because it was so, it was groundbreaking. I really thought that. But everybody I knew was reading it. So it came as a bit of a shock when it suddenly disappeared from the shelves. It seemed in my bubble, of fellow geeks and people who like to read stuff, we were all reading it, and it just seemed that it would, this is going to go on forever. It's so popular. But of course, it was probably just, it was just us reading it.
Well, the thing, it did all right. It made money, and the sales kind of increased as it went on. But they decided that the initial sales weren't enough to justify it. Basically, they wanted to kill it, so they killed it.
Right, yeah. So I've never heard of something increasing sales, then someone going, well, the first issue wasn't great, so let's get rid of it on that premise alone. Yeah. What a great shame. What a great shame.
I suppose in that time as well, the expectations were high for comics, weren't they? Because there were some massive sales figures out there.
There were, and I think it was the fact that it was kind of, it was quite diverse. People with Vertigo and the other small comics companies, people were trying different things. It wasn't all superheroes. You had Love and Rockets, you had Concrete, you had all kinds of interesting
Deadline in Britain as well, around about the same time. Yeah. It was a very exciting time, I think.
Yes, it really was. But I think people, wanted material that, I mean, we've just mentioned a lot of really good stuff, but there wasn't an infinite amount of it. And so, once you'd read those things, you were back to sort of reprints of old Batman stories, which was, I think, what ended up clogging up the shelves, and the impetus was lost.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, it doesn't fit, does it? The old Batman stuff, when you've got a readership that want something new and fresh, it's just a different audience altogether.
Yeah, and probably a much smaller audience, which was part of the problem.
I think that's something that a lot of, I mean, I could be completely wrong here. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, guys. But I think that comics publishers in general sometimes don't understand that, superheroes is a niche. The mainstream population are a lot more interested in more mainstream subjects. I find anyway.
Yeah, but the trouble is, it is the superheroes who pay the rent. So if you're a comic shop, you're going to devote most of your shelf space to superhero stuff and a tiny amount to everything else. And it's very understandable. These guys want to stay in business, but it would be nice if they took a few more chances.
Yeah, I agree totally. So going back to Resident Alien, so we've had we're into a first series. I understand it's been optioned further on than series 1.
Yeah, they greenlit series 2 yesterday.
Fantastic. That's
and what kind of, now that it's going ahead, what kind of storylines would you like? I'm sure you've thought about this. Would either of you two like to have included in a next series?
I think Chris Sheridan is very much going his own way with this thing. He did.
Right.
He has mentioned that there are sort of 1 or 2 elements of what we've done that he'd like to include in the future, but I'm not going to ruin the surprise. No. I think he wants to keep them quiet for the time being.
And has Chris, and again, without giving anything, it's a yes or no answer, has Chris got a finite point where he wants to take the story of Resident Evil in his mind? Is there an end?
Alien, not evil.
God.
I bet you get that all the time, don't you guys?
Yeah, we do.
I made that mistake off camera. And my missus said, don't say Resident Evil, whatever you do. So I do apologise, Peter.
Don't say evil. Don't say evil.
I'll be caught. Don't say evil. Don't say evil. Don't be obsessed with horror.
Yeah. I've forgotten the question.
The original question was, has Chris got a finishing point where he wants this series to go? Is there an end point where he wants Dr. Van der Spiegel to end up?
I'm not sure. I mean, I read an interview with him recently where he said he hoped that it would go on for 4 or 5 series. So I think he's still mining it. I think there's a lot of stuff that he wants to do, and I for one am as interested as anybody else to find out what it is.
And that's nice, isn't it? That you can also enjoy it like that.
And have you two got a finite finishing point for your saga?
Well, we're into tricky territory here because a lot of the questions that people want to ask about the future, I can't answer until the last issue of Series 6 has come out, because that will basically, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
No, that's fair.
So you'll find out what the future is later on. Let's put it that.
That's a good answer. I'm glad you kept mystery. There's too many spoilers out there already. So it's great that there's still a bit of mystery and surprise in comics, Pete.
Yeah, well, I just want people to sit down and find out what happens when they read the damn thing,
Totally. I mean, the amount of comics I've had spoiled, not just by other readers, but by their bloody publishers. They put it all out there, all these major plot points to sell it. And I understand why they do it. It's because
But it's marketing.
Yeah.
It's by this issue, Wolverine dies.
Exactly.
Back next year.
Yeah. If it worked for Superman, it works for all of them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He was just copying Jesus anyway.
Hey? The original. But I do so miss that element of just finding out when you read something. When a major plot point happens and you just don't see it coming. I mean, it stays in your memory so much longer after reading all those classic storylines, you know, from the 70s and the 80s. We didn't know they were coming. You know, they just happened. But we still talk about them today. We still remember them today. And I do wonder.
Come back in a few months and you can talk to us again.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm really looking forward to watching the series and seeing what the differences are and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I've been looking on social media and there's been like two camps. You know, people who don't like the fact that it's different, and those who appreciate it. And I'm quite interested in how these guys, you know, and why they don't like it, why they don't like the fact that it's different. You know, because they seem to be very precious about, oh, it has to be just like the comic.
We don't like change, us geeks. We don't like it one bit. Yeah, it's the illusion of change. That's what we like.
I think they're in the minority, though, because the majority of stuff that I've seen has been people who like the comic but also like the TV series for different reasons because it's doing different things. And that does seem to be the majority. I mean, I do wonder what people who came to the TV thing first will make of the comic. You know, maybe some of them will like it, some of them won't. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, there's only ever, you know, I do wonder as well how many will make that transition. Because with everything,
very few, I should think.
It's the percentage seems to be quite low, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's the first series. We've only had the first 6 or 7 episodes. I mean, this is the point about how The Walking Dead worked very well because it went off in a different direction. The graphic novel sales, we're talking about a series that's 10 years old, don't forget. The graphic novel sales went up because it was a different story. Watchmen, after the film came out, the story started, people weren't buying the graphic novel anymore because they'd seen the film. So I think this, in the long term, could be a clever strategy. And you might very well see those resident aliens going up. All Dark Horse have to do is make a deal with Simon & Schuster like everyone else seems to be doing at the moment. And then you're in bookstores and banging the drum. So I think in the long term, it probably will happen. And it might even be, okay, it's on Sky One at the moment, but with a second series, with word of mouth, I really think it will build.
Yeah.
That seems to be the case. I mean, it is being shown pretty much all over the world.
Wow.
They're watching this thing in Russia and Turkey and Hong Kong and New Zealand.
That's amazing.
So it's quite an audience.
Is it humbling for either of you two?
I was going to ask that.
Yeah. Well, I beat you to it, didn't I, Shane?
You did.
Get your own questions.
It's very odd. It's very, very odd. You know, because for years it's been me and Steve and our editor.
Yeah.
And now there
suddenly
are hundreds of people involved in making this thing.
I thought you were going to say hundreds of people watching it.
No, there's a lot more than hundreds.
More than that, yeah.
I thought you were going to be self-depreciative. I've lost my words. Take the piss out of yourself.
But for any writer or artist, it's lovely, isn't it, to know that more people are seeing your work, whatever medium it's in. You know, that your ideas are out there and more people are appreciating it. That must be a great feeling.
It is. It is. But as I say, it's bizarre. I mean, who knows how many people are going to end up reading the books? We'll find out one of these days, you know. But it's a lot more than were reading them, you know, a year ago.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, that's
and
really
have either of you two had the honour of going on a set visit yet, and maybe being a background character?
No, I was about to go. To Canada, and then
what could have happened?
And then COVID happened, and they shut that down, and that was that. So,
there was very little COVID in Vancouver at that time. It's being filmed in Vancouver, and COVID figures were very, very low for that part of the world. But they had to sort of play it safe, nonetheless.
Yeah, and eventually they shut it down for months, and with only like a one episode to film. And then they went back when things opened up again.
And
but they all had to go into quarantine for a couple of weeks before they could start shooting.
And of course, the good thing is, because it's been renewed for a second season, you get that visit, I dare say, on season 2 when everything's died down and the world goes back to semi-normality.
Yeah, that would be nice. We'll nothing fixed yet, but
no. Hopefully. So maybe you and Steve will be ordering a coffee in the local cafe or something. We'll have to keep an eye out for you two.
Yeah,
in the background. So beyond Resident Alien, have you guys got any plans to work together on any other projects?
Have we?
Have we? I don't think we do at the moment. No. Anyway, we've talked about other things in the past, and usually they were things that failed to get off the ground. And then this was a bit kind of like last ditch. I was like, so, Steve, I want to work with you. What do you want to draw? Steve said, aliens. I
want to draw aliens. Yeah.
and we took it from there.
Because I've met a few, and I thought, why not include them? Also,
Sorry, go on.
I think this 10-year marriage has maybe sort of seen us through the opening scenes, don't you? We could diverge from this point onwards.
When you said, I want to draw aliens, was it something completely different you had in your head than what actually got pitched?
Yeah. But you have to be flexible. You have to be very, very flexible. And it was close enough. What Peter had in mind was close enough, because it did feature an alien who was not sort of a ravening monster, which was the idea I had in the first place. I think the idea we both had in the first place. And it was just serendipitous that we came together at the time that we did. We both had a similar perspective, on the alien thing.
Well, I've really enjoyed it, mate. I've really, really enjoyed, all of the comics so much. I'm so grateful that you guys got together. And I know lots of other people have as well, but it's consistently good. It's consistent, so good in every way. You can't fault it at all. I really, and I know it sounds like I'm just blowing compliments, but
like I say, the dialogue's very natural, isn't it? And of course, because it's a character-driven story, those are the sort of comics you fall in love with, because like you two said, it's been going for a decade now. To keep fans with you for that decade, I think really speaks to something beyond it just being a popular comic. And that's what we're seeing. Like you said early on in the interview, when you were writing those first few issues, it felt like it could be turned into something like a TV show or something in Hollywood, which it's done now after 10 years. And again, it goes back to the idea, it must be really good as well as bizarre, seeing every new episode and maybe being surprised as well by the differences and maybe some of the similarities. Do you find yourself looking for the similarities when a new episode comes through?
I don't know. I'm kind of sort of enjoying it on its own terms. I did find I'd seen the pilot before we started doing Series 6. And as a result of that, I really had to kind of like put the entire TV show out of my mind while I was writing the story. And then I could put it back again. But they are very different.
It captured me the first time I started to really laugh, because then I knew it was going to be that different from the book. It was that they were actually playing it for laughs, and then I grew to love it. And I thought the books were going to be a slow burn, which they have been, and they are the kind of books that I personally like, where you get a chance to know the characters, know the backgrounds, and understand them.
Yeah,
and I thought the TV series would possibly go the same way. It definitely has legs.
Oh yeah.
As long as Chris can keep the laughs coming, I think people will be hooked.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of people really like it. It's I mean, especially in these very weird times, to put something that's just really good, kind-hearted entertainment out there, is really going down well.
Yeah.
And you've got to have laughs when the aliens, Rays and Deteris, try to destroy the Earth. So it can only work because effectively, they've set him up like this alien monster, really. And the minute you see Alan Tudyk and dealing with all these situations, even when he kills someone, it is done for laughs. And that's very clever because it could have gone horribly in the other direction. And
well,
it could have been quite
because it's Alan, they can get away with it.
Yeah.
He's still, even though he's got this sort of dark side, which I'm sure will change over time, but because it's him, you kind of you're still rooting for him.
You really are,
despite all that.
And I've heard it said that the cast in general are all very good comedians in their own right.
Yeah, a couple of them came out of stand-up, so
right. So that really is. Sorry, Steve.
Is good, and their response to the script is sort of just super professional. Then, in other words, they're not overstating it the way that maybe a thespian type actor would.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very easy to fall into that trap, isn't it, with adaptations sometimes, is to totally miss the tone and to go over the top. And
well, it is a great tone as well. I mean, when I look at other adaptations, maybe of a novel like the American Gods, it's very flashy. It's very flashy. And I know people I've spoken to have kind of fallen out of love with American Gods because of the flashiness. This is a completely different thing, like a lot of adaptations are anyway, but this is a very different thing. And I think, for whatever reason, Thursday night at 9 o'clock is just the perfect time for it. I don't know why, but it's certainly, for me, it sort of relaxes me. Whatever the day I've had, I can lose myself in another person's life because of this community that's being built up around them. And I do like, the various characters. I forget the name of the actor who plays the sheriff, but he's a real standout guy as well.
Corey, yeah, he's really funny.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to watching it because I love the sheriff in the comic,
They're very different.
They are very different.
Really.
Very different.
I mean, when you were saying about that it's a child that can see him. Obviously, in the comic, it's the nurse, isn't it? And so that's a difference as well.
Well, this is. I mean, I get the feeling maybe in later episodes and later series they might have other people, but at the moment, the child starts off as like absolutely fearful, and then they have this begrudging relationship going on, and it's just great, and you want to see that happening in every episode. So there's lots of hooks already built up, and that's after 5 episodes that I've seen. Like I said, I've got 2 more to watch, and I dare say the one that's on tonight, which is nice.
Excellent. Well,
I suppose
tonight
is it's different. I won't say anything more than that, but it's
right.
It's good, but it's very different from the tone of everything that's come so far.
Right, that's worth it. And I take it you two have seen the full 10 episodes of this first series, have you? Now that
haven't seen the finale.
Okay.
And nobody gets to see the finale, I think.
Really?
Tonight. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're not letting the press see it. So I don't know. I don't know what Chris is planning for the end of this, but we'll
I
see.
think that's a good idea. The less people know of what happens in a finale, the better. I think.
Yeah, well, like I say, it goes back to avoiding spoilers and builds up a certain anticipation.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 5 to 9. So, sorry, Steve, go on.
No, I was just about to say I've only seen about 4 or 5 episodes. So, like Shane, I don't have Sky.
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out a way to actually pick them up.
It's the one thing.
To you. If I find a way, Shane, I'll let you know.
and I do not condone piracy or torrenting. I'll just get that out there, which is why I haven't seen it. Yeah.
It's all pucker.
That's all right then. Well, it is 5 to 9.
So we haven't even talked to Pete about his working for Pete Townsend. God damn it! So we are going to have to get you back.
We will get you guys. Another day, definitely.
And Steve, thank you, because of course, as you said off screen, this is the first time in a broadcasting studio, so this really is an exclusive. CB Jazz Hands.
Exclusive.
I hope it goes down well.
We hope that we didn't treat you too badly, and that we were gentle with you, Steve.
Yeah, it was fine.
Be happy to come back.
It would be lovely to have you back, guys, and because there is so much to talk about with you guys. Your work that you've done over the years is just absolutely incredible, you know. And we'd love to talk more, and we'd love to talk more about Resident Alien as well.
Thank you.
See, I never said evil once, Ollie.
I'm hanging my head in shame and losing 2 nerd points.
Definitely.
We forgive you.
Thank you, Stephen. Peter made it better by saying I'm always getting that. So thank you for my faux pas.
There you go.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay,
See you again soon.
Okay.
Yeah, see you soon. Thank you. All
Have
the
a great
best.
evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.